Welcome to Sports Talk with Steve Jones, the daily talk show with the voice of Penn State football and men's basketball. You never know what special guest may stop on by any given day. Now here's the man of the hour, Mr. Steve Jones.
Important stuff in a moment, but I want to give you an opportunity to discuss in 49 good San Francisco seconds what you're going to do with a fifth-round pick for Deebo Samuel.
I guess they needed a pick in every round. They didn't have a fifth-round pick. Honestly, I didn't think you were going to get much better. To me, this is a guy that wanted out. Guy's production has been down, going to be 30 years old next year, so I don't think you were going to get that much better. If you trade him at the deadline, I think you might get a third-round pick. But
see, that's what always baffled me. I always kid you about these things, but I'm not kidding on here. The Claypool trade to the Bears for a second-round pick. I was in total shock when that happened because in the NFL, you're usually getting a fifth, a sixth, or a seventh. If you get like a fourth-round pick, that's like, wow. Yeah. Boy, that's something.
Unless it's a quarterback. Quarterback, you're going to get quarterback or a franchise player, you're going to get two first-round picks.
Well,
but
this, Samuel, I wasn't surprised it was a fifth-round pick because that's just the going rate of what the NFL is.
Yeah, sure.
That's just the going rate of the NFL. Yeah. Now, what does he do to Washington? He raises the profile tremendously. You've got an exciting young quarterback. You already have a terrific wide receiver in Terry McLaurin.
Sure.
You now add this guy with his versatility to that offense. Washington has a little bit more of a dynamic look today.
Yes. Because
after playing Philadelphia in the NFC Championship game, they want to somehow go toe-to-toe with the champions.
Yeah.
And Samuel's the kind of guy that allows them to get closer to going toe-to-toe with champions. San Francisco, you're in a tough spot when a guy, first of all, when a guy demands a trade, you automatically drop down 2 draft picks.
Easily. I agree.
Instead of just trading the guy and getting a third because he demanded it, they're all sitting there right now going, but he wants out.
Released. Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
So we'll give you a fifth.
Yeah.
And that is how it works. When the player demands it, the value of the deal drops.
Significantly. Yes.
Right? And that's the way it goes. Okay, a couple of college football notes. All right, now we'll get to the interesting stuff. We're done with your boring stuff. What? No? We're still friends, right? No. Okay. Texas will be raising football season ticket prices by $13 per game for the upcoming season. I would assume Texas has 7 home games.
Yeah.
So you're talking about an increase of, what, $91, right?
Yeah, 70, 20. Yep, 91. I had to add there 70, 21, 91, yep. Look at that. They teach you how to carry the number. I'll tell you, I learned it. Matt just got stronger and stronger as the years went on.
Why do I work here? Anybody up? I'm asking upstairs. Why do I work here?
Math was the strength in my early days.
Well, based on that answer, imagine what your English score was. All right, so Athletic Director Chris Del Conte announced the price increase this week in his annual campus town hall. He detailed the program's expected finances upon the approval of the landmark $2.8 billion lawsuit for a house versus the NCAA. Texas, he says, will have nearly $30 million in new costs and about 200 new scholarships across all sports. Because, again, this $20.5 million is payment to athletes. All right?
Mm-hmm.
The part that also is an increase, okay, which he's telling you was $9.5 million, is the cost of the scholarships. The roster limit.
Yep.
Right? So let's take wrestling, right? 9.9. Kale's had to divvy up quarters, thirds, halves, right? all over the place. He has himself a roster. Now, Cale has already told Pat, he says, you're allowed to go to 30. Penn State's not going to go to 30 in wrestling. And again, you're one of the keys for coaches is what's my workable number.
Right.
Well, let's just pick a number. Okay, let's pick a number. Say Cale decides 22 is the right number. Well, that means that there will be 12.1 more scholarships handed out for Penn State wrestling. Get the cost together. Okay? What does the cost come to? Football, 20. Now, not everybody, football will use the maximum. They need all 105. They need them all. I've talked to Mike Rhodes about it. Mike still feels good about staying at 13. Okay? He's allowed to go to 15, but he'll probably stick around 13. Women's basketball is a great example of this. I don't think women's basketball will not change. They'll be at 15 scholarships.
Yep.
I don't think there is a women's basketball team in the Power 4 or the Power 5 that has 15 scholarship players because they have male practice teams. Most have a workable number of 12.
Sure.
Right? Because you're looking for the workable number. Like it's possible to have, believe it or not, it's possible to have too many. Right? It's a lot to manage. So you still have to do this. One day in my class, we did an exercise. This was last fall. And we took all the new scholarship numbers for every sport that Penn State has. So there were certain things we had to limit. No beach volleyball, things like that, rowing. I said, let's just do this for if Penn State were to fulfill every scholarship and the new roster limit, which is a big if. That's not going to happen, but if they were. I said, so let's take an average of $30,000 as an average because out of state's going to cost more. Drew Aller's scholarship cost more than Bo Perbula's did. Sure. Bo was in-state with an in-state rate. Drew was an out-of-state rate. Nicholas Singleton is an in-state rate. Yep. Katron Allen's an out-of-state rate. Okay. Niederhauser's from Switzerland. I don't know what his rate is. So I said, let's just do this on an average of $30,000. And what we came out to with this is additional, $11.8 million when we did all the multiplication. We're going to bring you in for that, but after this.
Multiplication, that's got good strength there.
It's a disaster.
Full strength.
So that's why it's not just the $20.5 million. It's going to be the additional, let's just do a conservative number, $10 million. $9 or $10 million you're going to have to come up with for additional scholarships. So it's going to be about $9 million more in scholarships. Del Conte says, we plan to get to the full limit. And you're going to see that across the board that there's going to be a lot of full limits. Now, Texas did make about $7 million last year. They had $332 million in operating revenue, $325 million in expenses. Okay? But they're going to increase increase prices for tickets. Mm-hmm. It doesn't sound like they're cutting any staff or anything like that. Indiana did. Indiana cut 25 on staff. Now, they're going to have the additional issue, and Texas may have the additional issue too. What do you do with Terry, the basketball coach? I mean, I don't think they're going to do anything with him, but they're not happy with him right now. But Mike Woodson there's going to have to be a buyout at Indiana for Mike Woodson. On top of more scholarships, on top of the $20.5 million. They already paid out a hefty buyout on Tom Allen.
Tom Allen, absolutely.
I think Tom's buyout was 15
yep.
Something like that. This stuff all adds up.
Sure.
So now let's get to the Andrea Adelson, David Hale, Pete Thamel story. They misspelled your name in here.
They would not be the first. Even though my last name is 4 letters, they would not be the first.
Florida State and Clemson are going to vote tomorrow on an agreement that would ultimately result in the settlement of the 4 ongoing lawsuits between the schools and the ACC and a new revenue distribution strategy. This obviously would solidify the conference membership. The ACC's board of directors is scheduled to hold a call on Tuesday to go over the settlement terms. Florida State has called a board meeting to present the terms at noon tomorrow. Clemson plans to do the same. All 3 boards have to agree on this settlement for it to move forward. So according to sources and great reporting by Andrea Adelson, David Hale, and Pete Thamel of ESPN.com, according to the sources, the settlement includes 2 key objectives. Number 1, establishing a new revenue distribution model based on viewership and a change in the financial penalties for exiting the league's grant of rights before the conclusion of 2036. So let's start with the first part. New revenue distribution model. Normally in these contracts, there is a maximum number of times a school can appear on the Tier 1 rights. Okay? So, for example, I know when CBS had their deal with the SEC, the maximum number of times you could appear on CBS during the regular season was 5 times. Okay? So 5 was the limit. Now, once you get to postseason play, the SEC championship game, that's an add-on. That's completely different. There's also a minimum as to how many times you have to appear, like, for example, like on the SEC Network or BTN. There's actually a minimum. I think it's 2. You have to be on for that. When you look at the ACC, we have talked about this many, many times, worth repeating again. You have 134 schools. 18 of them make up 50% of the TV ratings, and it's not a small sample size. The sample size goes from 2016 to 2024, so it's a big sample size. Of the 18, 7 are from the Big Ten, including Penn State. 8 are from the SEC, Notre Dame, and the other 2 happen to be, voila, Florida State and Clemson. So their point is going to be, look, we're the ones that are driving eyeballs to TV sets. We should get more of the money. And this is what hurt the Pac-12 years ago when Bill Moose was the athletic director of Washington State. He convinced everybody else that there needed to be an equal distribution model in the Pac-12. Well, who does that end up hurting? USC, UCLA, right? The 2 LA schools in particular. Meanwhile, Washington State's in Pullman. What ratings are they driving? And it's not like I've watched Washington State football before, but except for that one, there's been a couple times when Mike Leach was the coach and they were going along and they brought game day out there. Okay, that season was fun, but that's a season.
Yeah, it's a season. Yeah.
Before that, the last time they were really that relevant and exciting was when Ryan Leaf was the quarterback and brought them to the Rose Bowl, where they played a heck of a game, but Michigan won the national title with Brian Griese at quarterback. Okay? But they had an equal distribution model. When you're the Big Ten and the SEC, you can do that. Because your contracts are so big, you can do that. Now, one day, does it come out that Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan looks around and says, hey, look, guys, we're driving this boat. And they are. Okay? Of the top 100 most viewed games, Penn State's in 8 of them. Right?
Including regular season top 3.
Yeah.
At least 1. Yep.
Yes. Right. No, they've got, I want to say there's 3 or 4 in the top 17.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
There's 8 altogether.
Yep.
I think it's 4 in the top 17.
Yeah.
Okay? Well, Ohio State, which has awesome ratings, Penn State and Michigan are driving the Big Ten football boat. Now you've added in Oregon, they're helping. Washington, it didn't help so much last year, but they're among the 7 Big Ten schools that are in that top 18. But right now, the Big Ten has enough money, and the potential's there for even more in the next contract, where everybody can stay even. The ACC's not in that boat.
No.
And I don't blame Florida State for sitting back saying, I'm getting sick of this. We're driving the boat here. All right? All of you are being helped out
Sure.
by our presence. And I don't care if Florida State was 2-10 last year. Okay? That doesn't matter. That's a year. My is in the large sample size. Now let's get to the next part. And that is they want to take a look at the league's grant of rights. All right. How long has this gone on now? 2.5 years?
Couple.
Okay. How often have you heard me say on this show, because I read it, okay, it's not a long document.
6 pages.
And I said on the show repeatedly, they can't find the loophole. The document's too simple. I mean, it's not one of those things like, it's a long 250-page complicated legalese document. No, it is not. It's very straightforward. And as I kept saying on the show over and over again, despite what people would say, you can break that, you can walk away from that. I'm thinking, what are you, nuts? You can't break that and walk away from it unless you want to pay you can pay a gigantic number. You want to pay $500 billion or $500 million? You want to do that? Especially with the House settlement, you want to pay $500 million? Where are you going to come up with that?
You're not coming up with that.
Okay? You can break that. No, these are just whatever. What world do you live in? Do you actually think that?
Nope.
Okay? I kept saying over and over again, you can't break it.
Right.
They had 2.5 years. If you can't find the loophole in 5 pages, because that's all it is. I think one of them, the Big 12 and the ACC, one's 8 pages, one's 5. I can't remember which one's which right now. Okay? But that's all it is. So let's just take the maximum. If you can't find it in 8 pages with a team of lawyers going over it, it's not there.
No. Texas and Oklahoma couldn't find it. They make a lot more money than
Texas,
every school that is trying.
Texas has attorneys, and they've got oil money out the backside.
They've got a lot of money.
Guess what?
Yeah.
Their attorneys poured over the Big 12 grant of rights, and guess what? We'll pay the $50 million in the last year. And I kept pointing that out over and over again, and I had people telling me I was wrong. I'm like, I don't think I'm wrong here. All right? The fact is, in 2021, the Oklahoma and Texas agreed to, and were invited to and agreed to join the SEC. Where'd they play football in 2021? The Big 12. Where'd they play football in 2022? The Big 12. Where'd they play football in 2023? The Big 12. Well, they finally got out at the end, the last year, and they paid $50 million each to do it. If that doesn't tell you, for some reason, there's people out there just think I will just walk away. Walk away? You can't just walk away. You signed it. And in Florida State's case, they signed it twice. They signed it in 11. They signed it in 16.
Yep.
New game. You agreed to it.
Sure.
You can just walk away. No, you can't.
No.
Now, if you want to get the language, the key year is now going to come in 2028, 29. Now, why 28, 29? Right in that range. Because that's when they start negotiating
for
the next deal for the Big Ten. Right? And I think the SEC would be 30, 31, because I think theirs runs out in 32.
I knew one of the two was definitely 32. It ran out. Yeah.
That's the SEC. Right? So it would be between the latter stages of, I would say, let's just say the beginning of 29 and the end of 31. Right around there, maybe the middle of 31. So in that 2.5-year span, there's an SEC new contract, there's a new Big Ten contract. What does this new deal mean? And it sounds like everybody's going to sign it. To give an easier exit for a Clemson or a Florida State. Now, you have to presume somebody wants you. And that is also something that nobody takes into account. Somebody has to want you. When I've told the story 100 times, I'll make it 101. I'm in Jacksonville last year. I'm speaking to the Penn State club there. I got the question about what about the possibility of the Big Ten expanding to 20? And so, it's a very casual give and take kind of thing. I said, I'm going to assume that this question revolves around Florida State because I'm standing in the state of Florida, right? Jacksonville's up north, just so you know, closer to Gainesville than Miami. Yeah, you worry me. Yeah. Surprised you didn't wear your Deebo Samuel shirt today. And I said, I assume this has to do with Florida State. And I said, is that a good assumption? He says, yeah, it is. Okay. And I said, well, look, I want to see how 18 works first. Sure. I said, 18's never been tried. I said, so I'd like to see how 18 works first before I start thinking about 20. Yeah.
And you're talking two of those 18 didn't even get a full piece of the pie first year either, too.
Right. Right. They're getting half shares. Well, no, they're getting half shares to the end.
To the end, yeah.
They're not going to get a full share till the new contract.
New contract comes in.
Right.
Yeah.
What Oregon and Washington are doing is playing the long game, and it's the smart play. Yeah. In fact, they're getting more money. They're getting more money in a half share than they would have had from a full share in the Pac-12. Sure. So start with that. And he completely understood the answer. He said, it's never been tried before. I said, you got to see how that works first because there's a lot of logistical issues. I said, it's not just a football issue or a basketball issue. I said, you've got to take care of all 18 that are involved in every sport that the conference offers. Women's volleyball, women's soccer, baseball, softball. Right? Wrestling is not even a factor. The 4 West Coast schools don't have it. Neither does Florida State. They don't have it either. But I said, you got to take that into account. I said, it's a big jigsaw puzzle trying to get everybody scheduled in all the sports. I said, they all have their own scheduling model. And when I explained how complicated it was, and this is a great guy. He says, I completely get that because you're trying to bring out things that people wouldn't think of. They're thinking of the football part,
right?
Understandably,
sure.
Understandably, right? But then you start bringing in all the other management issues that go with it. I said because you're not going to the Big Ten does not bring in people, that of that scope to just play football. It said the ACC would love to do that with Notre Dame. I said, but they've got Notre Dame in for basketball. He said, has the Big Ten done that in other sports? Sure. Johns Hopkins plays men's lacrosse. Notre Dame plays men's ice hockey. Okay. That happens. That's a part of it. But not on this scope. If you're going to come in as a member like USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington, Maryland, Rutgers, Nebraska, when you come in, you are coming in for everything. I said, that's how the Big Ten operates. So now they say the top earners will net an additional $15 million or more, according to sources, while some schools will see a net deduction in annual payments at about $7 million. They say that's an acceptable loss. I don't see how they can compete with that. If you're talking about a top earner, Clemson, Florida State, at $15 million or more. For example, where does Pitt fall in that? And by the way, the deepest condolences to the Pitt football program on the loss of the freshman who just entered, Alexander. It's just terrible. But back on the money front, what do you tell Bill O'Brien at BC? What do you tell the people at Pitt? I mean, Pitt's not a top earner. No. How about let's be fair? Maybe they're middle of the pack. I don't know. Okay. But if you're the middle of the pack, you're still going to lose money. Okay. And they say the Brand Fund combined with the separate Success Initiatives Fund approved in 2023 and enacted last year that rewards schools for postseason appearances by the ACC would allow teams to hit necessary benchmarks in each to close the revenue gap with the SEC and the Big Ten, possibly adding in the neighborhood of $30 million or more annually should a school make a deep run in the college football playoff or the NCAA basketball tournament, thus leading the way in TV ratings. Okay. Now remember, SMU is currently taking no money. Okay? None. Zero. All right. They also raised $150 or $60 million in a week after joining the ACC. The question is going to be for the other schools, how do you navigate this? Now, Duke would be fine because Duke has, as you see, Duke has a kind of basketball team that has Final Four potential. That's what they're looking for. In other words, you would get a boost for doing that. Clemson, to be honest with you, Clemson last year was in the Elite Eight, and they've got all the earmarks of the ability to get to the second weekend this year. I saw them twice earlier this year, and I was impressed. Right? And being impressed has continued because I've watched them play through the ACC. Sources have suggested Clemson and Florida State would be among the biggest winners in the brand-based distribution, though North Carolina and Miami are expected to come out with a higher payout. Georgia Tech was actually the ACC's highest-rated program on TV last year in 2024, based in part because they opened the season with Florida State in Ireland. They were the only show in town. And that 7 overtime game with Georgia at the end. So Georgia Tech actually had the highest ratings this year. Basketball will be included in the brand initiative as well, but at an obviously smaller rate than football. Football is responsible for 75% of the league's TV revenue. It's about the same when it comes to the Big Ten. Both schools would consider it a win, as well as after they decided to file lawsuits in their home states in hopes of getting themselves out of the grant of rights. Florida State's attorneys said that, well, we can get out, but it would have to pay as much as $700 million to leave. There. So I said $500 million. That was conservative. Although the settlement will not make substantial changes to the grant of rights, it's expected that there will be a decline. See, that the thing about the grant of rights is it brings with it declining financial penalties every year. So it's like like we talk about coaches' buyouts, right? Well, if you notice in coaches' buyouts, let's just pick easy numbers. It's $10 million the first year. It's $8 million the second. It's $5 million the third. It gets down to $2 million the fourth. It gets down to $1 million the fifth. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's the same thing with the grant of rights. As time goes, the number gets smaller. That's why Texas and Oklahoma paid $50 million to get out of the final year each. So that saga appears to be coming to a close. Are you here all week?
I think so.
The saga continues. So, just very quickly, did you see any of the Oscar-nominated movies?
Any of the Oscar-nominated movies? Not too many of them.
I saw none.
Yeah, no,
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't see any of them. Now, I don't get a chance to go out to a lot of movies.
No, yeah, I'm trying to think if I saw any. I'm looking at the list here.
I mean, but when you're not doing things like this or State High
Sure.
or whatever, you're at a Metallica concert.
That's right.
Holding up "You're Better Than Taylor Swift" signs. Well, I don't know.
That's right.
Why do you do that?
I tell you.
Why? Why do you do that?
They outdrew Taylor Swift at a couple shows. Did at SoFi, I believe.
Oh, you're just... I would say you're trying, but I would mean that in a different sense. You're trying. All right. Hockey's going to be at Michigan.
Yeah.
Now, believe it or not, in a skewed sort of way, if they can win it, it helps them in the pairwise because they're on the road.
Yeah.
Arizona State, I believe, lost over the weekend. So Penn State, I believe, is 14th. Right there. And as somebody said to me today, pairwise is stupid. I said, while I understand where you're coming from, I said, it also is the way to get in.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, and I can't tell you how you calculate it.
No.
I have no idea. But when you see they won at number 1 Michigan State, they beat number 2 Minnesota. Those are voted rankings.
Mm-hmm.
The coaches aren't looking at those rankings. They're looking at pairwise.
Right.
Pairwise is what gets you in. That's why, for example, I don't use rankings when I'm talking about a game. Jack and I will be in the pregame show. I don't sit there, hey, what a great game today. We got number 8 Penn State against number 10.
Yeah.
No. Now, when we get to the end of the season, like the last 5 weeks, when they start voting in the college football playoff, that's actually the ranking that counts. And by the way, I have nothing against rankings in the least because I think it does so much to promote college
absolutely.
football,
Sure.
promote college basketball, promote sports in general. People like rankings. They love rankings. And it gets people interested. Hey, big game today, But, I mean, do you think, for example, Maryland, which played Penn State in basketball Saturday, is the number 16 team? Well, based on the rankings they put out, the 4 brackets, which the NCAA tournament committee put out, they're not one of the 16. Now, that may change. Could very well change. But they're not one of the 16. That doesn't mean they're not like a 5 or 6 seed, right. Which is phenomenal. Being a 5 or a 6 seed is great. Am I boring you here?
Nope.
You're yawning.
Yeah.
Did you just get back from the bars? What'd you do?
No.
Yawning. Wow. But those are rankings.
Yeah.
I mean,
Sure.
Are they the number 16 team? Based on the NCAA tournament, the NCAA tournament? No. It doesn't matter.
Right.
The key is to just get in. Okay? Just get into the thing. All right? And then try and see you can get the best draw possible. And that's important. Are they a good team? Yeah, they're a good team. You don't need as much depth unless you have foul trouble in the NCAA tournament. And here's why. If you stay out of foul trouble, then the TV timeouts are longer. You get more rest, more breaks in the NCAA tournament. Also, as we all know, the first coach-called timeout in the second half is a long timeout. If you notice, during the regular season, the first called timeout of the first half by a coach is a 30-second timeout. Okay? Unless it's inside that 4-minute and 30-second, inside that 30-second window for a TV break. But in the NCAA tournament, first called timeout by the coach, they use it or lose it, is a long timeout. So you have one extra timeout each half, and the TV timeouts are longer. Right? So you don't need as much of a bench because, how many bench points do you think Maryland has scored in the last 2 games?
2 games?
Last 2 games, how many bench points does Maryland have?
It definitely wasn't many on Saturday.
Do you follow the games?
Yeah.
How many bench points?
25?
Too high.
15.
Too high.
That's what I figured. 8.
Too high.
Too high still. 0.
Exactly. They have exactly no bench points in the last 2 games.
Yeah.
Now, does it play a role in the conference tournament where you're day by day? Yes.
Absolutely.
When you have an NCAA tournament game and then a break, not as much. And if you win the second one to get to the second weekend, you've got a few days off. All right? I mean, in terms of playing, you'll practice, but you practice much less this time of the year in terms of time put in. But that is that's something to keep in mind. Like a team like Maryland, you'll see most coaches will pare down their rotation to maybe 7. Because now you're okay. These are the crunch time games. This is all about the guys that you trust. That's why you'll see shorter rotations, and you have longer timeouts. You can keep your starters out there longer. You can keep your rotational players out there longer because of the longer TV timeouts. And that's why you'll see that. Now, Tennessee, Alabama. Did you watch the end of that game?
Did not, unfortunately. Yeah.
Do you follow sports?
I do. Did not see that game, though.
Daylights out of me. Alabama looks like they have the game won. And then there's a couple of free throws by Tennessee. And then there's a missed one. Rebound. On the rebound, another foul, more free throws. Now, let's see, the clock's all stopped here. So the game is now tied. Alabama comes down, and as I've said many times, one size does not fit all. It depends on your team. People always have been talking about calling a timeout versus not calling a timeout. And I see it all the time where coaches don't call the timeout. Okay? I also see coaches all the time, a chunk of the time, call a timeout. Well, Nate Oates elected not to call a timeout. He's got his team out there. The game's tied. Let's get them on their heels, moving backwards, and let's see what you got. And then the ball went out of bounds. When it went out of bounds, then he called a timeout. So there's 3.6 to go. This goes back to the knowledge of how to play the game. And this was a freshman throwing the ball in. It's a 5-second call, right? And guess what? Take it and throw it off the guy out of bounds. Instead, it's a 5-second call. The ball never entered. And Tennessee got the ball, went down the floor, didn't use their timeout. Took the ball, went down the floor. He played it perfectly. He took I don't know how many dribbles, 3-4 dribbles, got him some, took a nice, comfortable, maybe 25 to 30-foot shot, knocked it down. Because he knew how much time he had in his head. All right? He knew how much time. He didn't rush. Not a lot of freshmen playing right now.
No, the game has certainly gotten older. There's no question. Ever since we've seen.
I mean, Cooper Flagg is one of those, And the kid for Alabama is a terrific player. But you think about in the Big Ten, who are the freshmen that are playing right now? I mean, really playing, right? Bailey, Harper, Queen.
Yep, Queen, yep.
Mobley from Ohio State. Yep. And now much more Jace Richardson at Michigan State. Jace Richardson wasn't playing much early. Now he's playing a lot. He's kind of grown into it. This is Jason's son, who played for the Warriors at one point, among other teams. I figured I'd give you at least some San Francisco love there.
Former slam dunk champion, I believe.
Yes. Oh, no. He was a high wire act. There's not a lot of freshmen playing right now. It's become such an older game because of the portal.
Absolutely.
Because of NIL. And let's face it, lack of options. So I can stay here, make some cash, or I can go to Uruguay. Let me think about that for a moment. These were options that were actually presented to you in our meeting. Just want to know, of the 5 people in the meeting, 4 were hoping for Uruguay.
I know. How about it?
I was the holdout. All right. Back tomorrow. Great to have you with us on the show today. A little late today. Just so everybody knows, the reason I was late today, I was at my legendary friend Lou Prado, his funeral was today. That's why I was a little bit late. So my apologies for that, but I think after explaining it, everybody knows I thought the absolute world of Lou. So
absolutely.